There we go. So, yeah, this is a recording of adventures of all kind, yours, mine, the world, whatever. And one of the favorite things that Canadians like to talk about is the weather, of course, wherever we're located. And I was just saying here in Amman, Jordan, it was one of those stunningly beautiful days. It's range during the day around 27. It's now 9 o'clock at night, so it's cooler. And crystal clear skies, despite the often heavy pollution that hangs on the city or around above the city. And there was a breeze, so it was just cool enough so that when you walked around, it was just stunning, just great, great stuff.
Nice.
And you just said that there you are in Canada, and it's sunny and bright and beautiful, and you're probably happy not to be in North Saskatchewan right now.
Well, it's quite the contrast. Right now, it's very nice. It's a beautiful, just about 20 degrees, and in a couple hours, I'll be teeing off in a golf competition. So that's a tough life to have. But last week in northern Saskatchewan, it
Mhm.
rose to a high of 5 or 6 degrees during the day and
Ooh.
pouring rain.
Oh,
Different type of adventure.
oh, one of the first and last times I went whitewater canoeing with a group of people that just they're all, jocks. And I thought, what am I doing here? It was the South Channel of the French River outside of Sudbury.
Yep.
And their whole point was to shoot the rapids,
Yep.
do white. What the? My first time in a canoe. There must have been about 18, almost 20 of us. So it was a tribe, a
Yep.
tribe shooting the South Channel of the French. Started raining the minute we left shore, got into the river, and this was in August. Never stopped raining. Did not even for a minute. Thought, this is an adventure? No, it's not. This is stupid. I couldn't wait, to get out of the rain. And then, of course, the canoe tips, and of course I'm soaking wet, and it's August, and the wind comes right up the channel of the river as you're going down. It's coming up. Your teeth are chattering, and I kept saying, "It's August. It's August. Like, what is this nonsense? Welcome to Canada."
And you're doing this by choice. Like this is not an employment related thing. You're not being
Oh,
forced to do this.
no.
I flew halfway across the country to Edmonton to meet the crew that I was canoeing with in Edmonton. We then drove about 10 hours to northern Saskatchewan to a beautiful little town called Missinippi, Saskatchewan. There's like 40 residents that stay there in the winter, and it balloons to close to 1,000 in the summer. It's a mecca fishing location. A couple of high price fishing lodges for fly-in fishermen, and a lot of people pay a lot of money to go fishing up there.
Mhm.
But so we go up there and we start the canoe trip. Now, the funny part about this, 2 years ago, we did a similar route in the same place,
Mhm.
and it was 15 degrees Celsius.
Oh,
So Jeff packs for 15 degrees Celsius.
oh,
Ah, mistake number one. We get up
oh,
there, 3 to 4 degrees and rain and into headwinds. Like we're the first three
oh,
days we're northern bound into
no.
headwinds,
Oh,
paddling on waves that are like, and when I say a 2 foot swell, that means nothing to most mariners,
yes,
except
yes.
if you're in a canoe.
Oh, yes. Oh, I know what little I understand about, the measurement,
Yep.
the experience alone. I immediately go, never, you
When
will
you're
never
when the
get
front of
me
your
there.
canoe's hopping up and slapping
Ah,
on top of the waves,
no,
and all you can do is just this paddle
no,
and
no.
paddle. And you know it's bad when everybody in your party, all the canoes just go silent. Nobody
Oh,
even wants to talk. We're just
oh,
now the
oh,
last half of the trip went far better. It warmed all the way up to 10 degrees. It was like beach weather at 10 degrees Celsius at that point.
wow.
But amazing country. Absolutely amazing country. We saw moose and lots of bear. Just It's fantastic getting away from the hustle and bustle of urban built up areas
Yeah. Yeah.
and spending time in rural Canada or rural wherever you live
Yeah.
and just seeing how the other half lives, the other part of the population who don't want to be in high density locations, who
No,
don't want to live in condos and towers, who
no,
don't want walkable streets and 15-minute cities. They want about a quarter section, which is about 100 acres between them and their neighbor.
that's right. That's right. Well, even taking that out of a city country dialectic, we can also talk about why people in Canada live in different cities. I mean, my constant reminder is the city of Winnipeg in January. I mean, folks, that's not livable. This is ridiculous. The sky is always crystal clear blue.
Yeah.
Winnipeg is actually one of my top three favorite cities, and I drive people nuts when I say that because they look at me saying, "How could you? How could you?" The people are friendly. The city is workable. It's a little dangerous right now, but at -46, that was my last time there. And in February, when I was speaking at a conference, the Canadian manufacturers and exporters in Manitoba. And I was staying at this little hotel, which had fireplaces, but my room actually had a 3-inch ice brick at the bottom of the window because I breathe like most of us do, and it froze and stayed frozen
Yeah.
at the windowsill. And I thought, this is barbaric. This cannot be true. I'm inside, and that's what this is. And then I heard the temperature outside was -46, and it was nighttime. And I thought, how did and people were going out, people were jogging, people were
Yeah.
doing, and I thought,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. First time I was in Winnipeg in January, many, many, many years, even before years before I had this -46. It was -33 during the day. And I was staying at a hotel right at Portage, Maine.
Yeah.
And I walked out, which of course is like Windy City. It makes Chicago look like nothing. So I walk out of the hotel and I felt this burning sensation in my chest. And I thought, what am I having a heart attack? What's going on? Like, what? And I walked back into the lobby and it stopped. And I realized the vapor in my lungs was crystallizing.
Yep.
I thought, this can't be real. I mean, as a human animal, I'm not a bear. This is not the way, I'm going to survive. Yet there were people out, shoveling snow and doing this and doing that. And you just go, oh, okay, fine.
Yeah. Similar thing happened to me in Labrador, in Goose Bay, Happy Valley Goose Bay in Labrador one year in February. Stepping outside, I'm like, why can't I catch my breath?
Yes.
Like,
Hmm.
we're
Hmm.
not high above sea level. We're maybe 50 meters at most above sea
Yep.
level. This isn't an
Yep.
oxygen concentration issue. But when the weather takes your breath away from a very literal perspective,
Yes.
it
Yes.
it and then you think for, you know, the 10,000 years in North America since the ice sheet melted,
Yes.
indigenous people have been living off the land in these temperatures and obviously surviving because their
Yep.
lineage remains. You kind of look at modern society like, wow, this is it's pretty incredible. But the funny part about it though is, and I found this from previous time in the army when I spent some time in the desert countries.
Mhm.
Um, the human body is incredibly adaptable.
Yes.
So I spent the week in 3 degrees temperature walking around in bare feet and sandals. Just
Mm.
because you're wet and getting in and out of the canoe all the time, you can't stay dry.
Mhm.
Day one, I was shivering. Day 2, 3, 4, 5, the body acclimatizes.
Yes.
I found the last desert that I was running around with in the army, it was average temperature about 42, 43 degrees during the day. I would wear long sleeves, and after a couple of weeks, I wouldn't sweat anymore in that weather.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
body just acclimatizes to
Yeah.
the environment
Yeah.
it's in. The
Yeah.
challenge we had is everybody wanted air conditioning. So as you're popping in and out
Oh,
of
Yes.
air conditioned, it messes with your body. You're better off to just
Yes.
let it be.
Agree with you. I agree with you 1,000% because I personally don't like air conditioning, and I'm sitting here in my hotel room, and the air conditioner is, you know, the air is coming straight at me.
Yeah.
It's right there. And so it's 9 o'clock at night. I actually did take a nap because it was one of those days where you just go, that's it. It started at 4 o'clock locally, obviously.
Yeah.
What else could it be? It's 4 o'clock,
Yeah.
or otherwise. And I got out and I said, oh, I could sit in front of this camera. It doesn't matter if I don't even wear clothes. No one's going to know. And I said, yes, but you will know because
Yeah.
your toes are going to freeze, your hands are going to turn to ice, and the rest of you are going to start shivering. And I find that at home, I don't use air conditioning at all in the summer. I don't care how hot it gets because it just drains you because it doesn't prepare you to go out when the humidity is at 27 and the heat is at 30 in a dusty grungy town like Toronto, because that's what it becomes and so you're right, it does not, you do not adjust. One of among the many things I've done over the years, and I've been in Canada since 1969, so a long time. I don't wear gloves in the wintertime. People look at me, how could you not wear gloves? How could you not wear gloves? Until I had to start taking pills for my heart, uh, my hands were always warm because I
Yeah.
did not wear gloves.
Your hands
Because
acclimatizes to it.
that's right.
Yeah.
They were naturally warm at all times. Now, of course, that I'm taking medication, they're always cold, even in the middle of the summer. But let's not go down there. That's the joys of modern medicine. But it's that whole issue of we live in sheltered locations. Housing is a shelter,
Yeah.
literally. Right.
Yeah.
And we create an internal atmosphere, right? A climate, if you will. And that internal climate is not the same as the outside climate. And that's where, just as you said, that's where the difference becomes a clash.
Oh, and it's so difficult to operate
Yeah.
back and forth between the two environments. And it's the same when I find on my backcountry trips, and I do this at least once a year, if not several times a year for a week or so. Your first day is always a tough adjustment because your
Yeah.
body's used to living in the lap of luxury and urban society.
Yeah.
But by day two, it can, as the temperature might go up to 20 in the day and go down to 2 degrees at night, or whatever the temperature fluctuations would be, the human animal is amazing. It does that all on its own. And you don't require, oh, it's getting chilly, I have to start putting on all the layers. If you just let yourself get chilly,
Yeah. Yeah.
your body starts to, I mean, there's always certain extremes to that example, but
Of course. Of course. Yeah.
the temperature can fluctuate 15 to 20 degrees in the run of a day, and you shouldn't need to add or remove clothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Your body has the ability to do that.
that's right. One of the many reasons why I would not go to northern Saskatchewan or anywhere else in Canada to go canoeing again is that I have traveled around the world. I was touting that up recently. I've been on every continent except Antarctica, and I've been many times, repeatedly. And it's because I am acclimatized, to use that term, uh, demanding such luxury items as flush toilets, showers. I'm sorry, there are certain things I just will not tolerate. You know, first time you have to go to the bathroom. I'll be nice and not use street language here. You have to go to the bathroom in the woods. Yeah, whatever toilet paper you carry with you. I'm sorry, that is not a luxury item. The toilet paper is the luxury item, but
It,
doing it in the woods, no.
I will disagree adamantly with you. There's nothing more wonderful than having a constitutional sitting in the woods, leaned up against a tree, overlooking a beautiful landscape and enjoying the fresh air. It
Uh-huh.
is superior to using modern facilities.
Well, I remember being at a cottage, again, everything, all my experiences are centuries ago. And it was in winter. And because everything was shut down in a cottage during winter, the outhouse was the only place to go to. And the outhouse had its typical, the owners must have been very, very funny people. Um, it had the typical or traditional half moon, but the half moon faced the lake, not on the door. And so when you sat down, there you were in full, not just frontal. That was, there was nothing out there to, worry about the frontal. It was the gale wind, winter wind slapping you in the face as you sat down on this ice crusted thing. We'll just call it a thing.
Yep.
Said to yourself and saying to yourself, why am I here?
Yep.
You're questioning my own sanity. Just like, really? When do we leave? I was actually clocking it. When do we leave? And can we stop at a local gas station, please? This is not going down well.
It's you just, I mean, the quintessential Canadian canoe trip is something everybody should do. I recommend
At least once. Yes.
at least once.
Yes.
There's even the Churchill River outfitters that we used, fantastic group of people. They've been doing it for decades. If you have a lot of money, they have beautifully, completely packaged, guided trips. Ours obviously are all self-guided,
Mhm.
self-contained. We bring all of our own equipment. We just rent the canoes from them
Yeah.
and a couple of other pieces of equipment and then buy some maps of the local area. Other than that, we support ourselves. But these opportunities exist, and there's some pretty big wonderful places to go to. The next one on my list, the next two on my list, one is Nahanni, Northwest Territories.
Oh, yes. I know people who've been up there.
And
Yes.
there's the North and South River broken up by Victoria Falls, one of Canada's least known, but I would argue more beautiful set of falls than Niagara Falls because it's
Mhm.
not commercialized.
Mhm.
And you can take a fly-in trip.
Mhm.
And that's another quintessential Canadian thing to do, is to strap your canoe to the side of a beaver or an otter float plane and to fly in the backcountry. Just that sound of the engine that's from the CBC's 1950s, 1960s. This is Canada documentary films. It's just a fantastic experience. And anybody can be uncomfortable. You can do it with all the right gear, but it's something. So I'm planning on going to the Nahanni, and I want to hit the Yukon River. And I think next year, this group that I go with is an eclectic group of individuals from all different sectors of society. We just all have this crazy common idea that this is a wonderful way to spend vacation days. Next year, we're looking at northern Vancouver Island. There's
Oh, I've been. Like, how far up?
three quarters the way up. I forget the name of the river, but it's the highest concentration of black bears and mountain lions in North America.
Interesting, because we used to do a leadership program in the vicinity of Comox and Courtney, which
Yeah.
is north end, northeast end of Vancouver Island. Uh, and flying in was always this little, well, was not quite an otter, but it was bigger than that because it's a commercial line. And you would stop in Campbell River and this here, that, and there, and what I loved about it was not the bears, take my word for it. It was flying low enough along the water to see the whales below you, between the mainland and the island. And you say to yourself, there is such a thing for a citified person like myself. There is such a thing as the out there, and it is wonderful to behold. It really is. It's stunning. Now, would I ever once again do a canoe trip? There isn't any reason this side of hell that would get me to do that. No way. For me, the last venture or adventure, depending on which word you want to use, where I was stunned at what I had to do was a Chinese squat toilet. I thought, no, if that's what I have to do in a city like Shanghai or Beijing, in a modern building, which was even more interesting. You'd think that they would have thrones, as they say, but no, Chinese don't know how to use thrones, and we don't know how to use one of those things, which is a hole in the wall. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, not a wall, hole in the floor.
Floor.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, and you just go, okay, on the 12th floor of a 30-story, large, newly built skyscraper, you're squatting as if you're in the woods somewhere. And I go, okay, this is something you have to accommodate in this kind of experience. And it's
Yep.
not primitive. It's not primitive. You've got to get that stuff out of your head. It's not primitive. This is reality. You
Well,
know,
different. A lot of people correlate different to primitive. In other words, I live this certain way. I live with these amenities, and if you don't have them, you're primitive.
yes, yes, yeah. Well, we humans are easy to judge. I mean, that's a given. Please, please. As a matter of fact, the running joke since I've arrived in all of my talks, especially the opening day, was the being astounded on the day of arrival. I left Toronto on Friday um, around 11:30 in the morning, and arrived at Queen Alia Airport in Amman at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. That to me is a pretty normal trip. Oh, it's been a long time since I've taken a long trip like that. But
Yeah.
you go to China, you go to Australia, you go to Buenos Aires. I mean, forget it. If you don't want to deal with that, don't have and you don't have the stamina, don't bother.
Yeah.
It's just that's reality. But the fun thing was, and it was it was actually astounding. Arrived in what I consider and is it, I consider as if I'm the judge here, a desert country. And it's a Saturday and it's May. And it's their spring, no different from ours. I left Toronto at 20 something degrees and arrived in Amman at 16 degrees. And I went, where am I? Did I
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
did I actually leave Canada or is this? And it was cold. It was that time of the morning. I get off the plane and I have my jumper, my jacket. And I said, oh no, I'm gonna put this thing on. I was met by a driver and all that to get to the hotel. But I thought, I did not expect it. You dress according to, or you pack according to expectation.
Hmm.
And I have all kinds of stuff that I would in my trunk, my travel trunk, that I would consider summer stuff. And it's not summer. It's this incredibly beautiful weather, but it's not 30 degrees is that's what I expected.
Yep.
And it just hasn't hit it yet. And they say to me, well, come back in August. I said, I've been here in August where it's 50 degrees. And quite
That's
frankly, no,
different. That's
that's
a different world.
that's that you can fry the egg out on the no, I'm not going to do that.
I didn't understand it. The first time I got off a plane in the United Arab Emirates, I had left Toronto. It was minus 10 degrees.
Hmm.
And we land in the UAE. And at the bottom of the stairs of the airplane were a bunch of people with Rubbermaids full of water bottles. Didn't understand it. Didn't know why they were there. My entire clothing was soaked by the time I got from the top of the stairs to
Yes,
the bottom of the stairs.
been there, been there.
I've never hit a
Yes,
temperature and a humidity change like that in my
yep,
life.
been there, been there.
And
Uh,
it's by the time you got to the bottom of the stairs, you knew why those
yes,
all
give me
along the
one.
air, all
Yeah,
along the airhead are fridges.
yes.
All right out on the airhead are
Yeah.
fridges. You're like, what are these things? This is ridiculous. No, you
Oh,
you
oh,
learn
yes.
really quickly why that's
Oh,
there.
yes. Oh, yes. The experiences in summertime in China, in various cities, is they will have water spraying at you. And you go, wait, you're getting me wet. And then you realize, well, if that doesn't get you wet, you are going to be wet, and it's going to be from inside as
Yeah,
opposed to outside.
yeah.
So it becomes almost a necessity. Ignore your clothes in some senses. It's not going to damage it, but you
Oh,
had better start dripping from an outside source.
you're going to get soaked in the spray, but
Yep.
10 yards down the road, the sun will dry that on your clothing in a heartbeat.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And it's, it's these quirky things that you discover in travel, whether it's internal in Canada or whether it's, different parts of Canada, or overseas or international. And it becomes that universal language where we could all relate to each other. Um, my running joke is when you meet a Canadian, a fellow Canadian, on the road, often enough, the opening conversation is about the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah. We Canadians are almost famous for that. We
Yeah.
talk about the weather. And
Well,
people look at us, like, what do
well,
you,
it's because our country's so big and we have such
exactly.
extremes in weather at the very same time frame.
Yes, yes. Well, while I was over this past few days, as I was teaching the weather report, two things, because my phone is now connected both back to Canada and in locally. Two things kept I found strange. We get the weather news from Canada, Ontario in particular, with the tornado warnings. And I'd have to write to people and say, "Are you people okay? Like, is it all right?" And they would,
Oh,
get back to me saying, "What are you talking about?" Well, it was delayed news because of the time
yeah.
differences. And here I was receiving it as a current, when in reality it was 12 to 20 hours past.
Yeah.
And therefore, there was no quote unquote weather crisis. Yet I'm here, and it tells me, and this was a real stunner. There are going to be major storms in Oman, rainstorms. And you look out the window and it's crystal clear. There isn't even a cloud in the sky.
Where are they coming from?
Exactly. Who is reading the weather? Do they have radar here, or they have somebody looking out at the sky?
But I remember my first dust storm
Oh,
in the desert, just like the movies.
yes,
And it
yes.
and it happened at a time where what I was doing, the group that I was with, was having a barbecue,
Oh,
an outdoor barbecue. So we had taken using some local ingenuity, we had taken some 50-gallon drums, halved them, cut
yeah.
them in half. We found charcoal briquettes on the other side of the world somehow, because
Oh, of
logistics people can do that,
course we
and
can.
fired up what we thought was local beef. We just prayed it was, and started to cook a barbecue. And this thing off in the distance, obviously, me being ignorant, having never seen this before, I had no idea what was
Oh,
coming.
yeah, yeah,
Just this wall.
yes.
And all I remember, all I could do, and I was in charge of the burger flipping, is I just put my head down, put my thumb over top of my drink to try to keep the sand out of my pot can. And I just stood there, and
Yeah.
I literally lost it. It's just like the saying, I lost the hand in front of my face. I'd
Uh,
never been in the middle of something like that where
yeah,
nobody could do anything. You couldn't walk anywhere. You couldn't find anything. You
yeah,
just closed down your face,
yeah.
and you waited for it to pass. And I think it was maybe, I don't know how long, 10 minutes, 12 minutes. And it went by. And then there was my whole charcoal barbecue and all of the local meat, in air quotes, covered in this layer of sand. And I said, you know what? We're eating this anyhow. So out came the brush and brushing all the sand off. But listen, when you live in the desert, for what I was doing at the time, you're living in the desert, sand gets in everything and everywhere.
Yeah, I can
Places
imagine.
you don't talk about at parties. Like, it gets in
Yes,
everywhere.
yeah, I can
So
imagine.
the fact that my local meat burger was covered in sand is just another day in the desert. But that is an incredible
Oh yeah,
experience.
yeah, yeah,
I've never
yeah.
had it since. It's just that once, but wow.
You raise a very interesting issue because or fact, here I am in the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. It's in the Middle East. It's a desert. No two ways about it. But it's not a sand desert. But the first time I was here, and I did a tour going to various places, avoiding the Dead Sea because there are too many tourists, and I'm not going to go diving into something that doesn't allow me to sink. And I just decided,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't need this.
I can watch that on TV.
Yeah, I began to realize that everything is this tan color, whatever. That's a nice way of putting it. It's a sandy. No, let me rephrase that. It's not sand. It's rock. It's dirt. It's mountainous. The city of Amman, as you drive from one end to the other, you're going up hills, down hills, up hills, down hills, scrub absolutely everywhere. It's all this almost uniform color of tan, but at the same time, it isn't because
Mhm.
it's not sand. It's
Yeah.
not the Sahara and it's not the Gobi, right? So when you do get a breeze or a wind, it's kind of clear. It doesn't pick up
Yeah.
all of the
All the
topsoil.
particles. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, you get images, realities, if you will, that are desert. So huge, vast parts of even inside the city are just empty. There'll be buildings here, there'll be buildings there, there'll be buildings all over the place, and then it's just empty. And it goes into gullies, it goes into this, that, the other, somewhat rugged. This isn't something that I would go trekking around in. And then you see a tent and a local Bedouin family with their sheep, their donkey, their horse, their dogs. And you go, okay. And you are in the middle of a very modern city.
Yeah.
Today, we were traveling from one end of the city to the other, having our meeting with the Canadian ambassador in one part of the city, and then going all the way to another part of the city. I can't even tell you what direction, because we had a driver, and I wouldn't drive in this city if you paid me huge amounts of money. I know Jordanian Canadians who would not drive in this city. This is just it's Middle Eastern. It's one of those, what do you mean you want to wait to allow somebody else to go in? No, 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 no. No, there is no yield to other traffic or oncoming traffic. There is a jockey for your position because it's all about power.
Yep.
So we go to the other end of the city, and I'm with Amin, who's Canadian, Jordanian, and even he doesn't like coming back and driving. He said one of the great things about being in Canada is that we have rules, especially on the highway, on the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So he said, here you don't have that. But the fun part is he's grew up in the city. He knows, you see the sheep and the whatever, the sheep in the meadow without a meadow kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing grows. Don't
Yeah.
ask me what they're eating, but there they are. And he said, he suddenly said, as we were driving, oh, look, there are camels. He said, that's very unusual. The camels are usually in the south, or they're not in the city. It's
Yeah.
very unusual to have the camels come in. And they're a different Bedouin tribe. They're not the local. They're actually from away.
Yeah.
As we
From
say,
away.
and they're bringing their camels into the city. And he's just seeing, like, there's this group and there's that herd over there, and it might be 3 camels, 5 camels, whatever. Nothing that you would see generally. And that people are not riding them; they're there. All right. Unlike in Petra, you could do a camel ride, which you couldn't get me on one of those beasts to begin with. But that's me. So, and he asked the driver. He said, "What is this? Why are there camels in this at this time of the year?" Because it usually is seasonal. They will come into the city, but not at this time of year. He said, "Why are they there? Are you ready for this?" Talk about cultural change. The newest commodity on the market here among Jordanians that people crave and want to buy is camel milk. Yes. And so the camels, the people who own the camels, so typical of Middle Eastern people, especially people who have the Nabatean DNA in their culture, being at the end of the Silk Road, of course, is an opportunity to sell something.
I'll sell it.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to bring my camels close. I'm going to milk them regularly. I know there's somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who's going to sell the milk. I'm going to sell the milk to them. They're going to do this, 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 and this. It is now a commodity. People look for camel milk. And I thought, where's the bazaar and who's trying to sell me a carpet? I mean, this is just so absolutely amazing
Yeah.
that you don't even scratch your head. You just go, yeah, why not?
Well, why not? I mean, listen, we've got crazy Canadians that think milk comes from oats and almonds.
Oh God, don't go down there.
So I mean, camel milk is actually probably a heck of a lot closer to actual milk,
Real milk.
real milk,
Yes.
than soy and almond and oat milk. So I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
Jordanians are probably smarter.
Yeah. Oh, the milk. Well, now you can go get coffee using different kinds of so-called milks. But in reality, you don't drink milk with coffee anyway. You don't drink coffee with milk, I should say. No, nobody, very rare. That's got to be an outsider, a foreigner, or somebody, some kind of visitor. You drink coffee that will curl the hair, even if you don't have any. It's just there it is.
My favorite always was the Turkish coffee.
Oh,
We used to call it jet fuel
it is totally.
because working with some Turkish colleagues overseas, and we would always trade for their coffee because the coffee that they brought along with them, like when you're done, and it's the first culturally place where I culturally saw people drinking coffee out of a glass,
Yes,
not out of a mug,
yes, yes.
which is a different cultural thing to North Americans, right?
Oh,
Because
yep,
we don't put it in glass.
yep.
But when you're done the Turkish coffee, there is a residual film on
Oh,
the inside of and it doesn't fall down the
oh,
cup. It stays
no,
glued to the side of the
right.
glass.
You have just had an intake of
Yeah.
something that is almost barbaric. It
Yeah.
might as well be the soil, that is plastered to the side in order to make the building.
Oh,
That's it. You could
oh,
use
you,
it to build, what did they used to say? You need a brick to build a fireplace? Well, you got it right there.
oh, yeah. I mean, you drink Turkish coffee and then you're like, okay, let's take on the world. I am ready to do anything
Oh,
right now, but I have to do something because I can't sit still.
that's right. That's right. That's right. Uh, well, last night I had dinner, late dinner. At the end of a teaching day, you're pretty bushed, and yet I had this professor from the German Jordanian University who wanted to have meet with me, and he couldn't make it before 8:30 at night. And I thought, oh, okay. So when he arrives, he says, "Oh, you must be hungry." And I thought, oh, but there's this great Turkish restaurant down the street. So, um, and there is a great Turkish restaurant down the street. Even among uh, Jordanians, Syrians, you name it, where there's pride in the national cuisine, they will all say the best cuisine from the Levant, from the Middle East, is from Turkey. And this proved it. And of course, you never order just, that little salad. You order the salad. And you're looking at it going, who's that for? It's obviously shared. You never just take it for yourself. So everything is shared. And we had, I don't know how many dishes with the bread that went with it, and you're eating with your hands, and the food is just outrageous. It is just so good. Then he looks at me as we must have, I didn't get back until 11:30, close to midnight, at the end of the evening. Then he says to me, of course, you would like some tea. Now we're dealing with tea in the Middle Eastern style.
Yeah.
Right? And it comes with the pot and the on the tray, the young man is putting it there, and it's glass. It's a glass about this big. And of course, you know it's going to happen. You've seen it in all the travel films. He's pouring it, and it's just coming down in this nice stream, and so on and so forth. And I look at it and I said, do I really want tea? Am I going to stay up all night? Well, after all that food, doing my typical Western thing. I don't drink coffee after a certain time because I want to sleep at night.
Yeah.
So you immediately put tons of sugar in it. Everything has to have sugar in it except the coffee. The coffee is as strong as it is. You just, eat it with a spoon. Whereas this is delicate. You put in all kinds of sugar, and I'm saying, I don't do sugar. I don't do this. And I'm saying to myself, I'm having this argument with myself between my ears going, will you just shut up? Just do what everybody
do it.
else does. Just
Yes.
do it. Well, this is not Chinese tea. This is not English tea. This is, I don't know what it is, but it's brilliant.
Yep.
And then in the end, he says, well, we have to do dessert. And I went, after all that food that we couldn't finish, we have to. You cannot end a meal without something sweet. And so he orders baklava, the Turkish version of baklava, with ice cream right in the middle of it. And this thing is the size of a hockey puck plus. Actually, a hockey stick. This is not small. And and looking at it going, Victor, you don't do this. This is not what you do at home. You don't, at the end of this massive meal, where you're already feeling that you're stuck to the chair, and then this dessert arrives with not sugar, but honey and ice cream and chopped nuts. And you're just going, what the frig? Are you nuts? Did I eat it? Damn right I did.
Damn right. And this is something that I learned over the years, embracing other cultures. Is I had a great meal, Turkish meal, turned out to be on the island of Cyprus.
Yes.
And it wasn't a menu.
No.
A bunch of us were invited to dinner. You're invited to dinner at a restaurant. At the end, you're going to get a bill divided by 8, whatever it is. You don't know what it is. You don't ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just served over a period of 3.5, 4 hours.
Yes.
You're served the local cuisine in the method the locals eat it. So it's a very unique experience. You don't know what's coming as, and you have no idea how many more courses are coming down range.
No.
But you're not surrounded by TV screens. You're not surrounded by smartphones.
No.
It's actual human conversation
Yes.
over food for 3 or 4 hours straight. And you don't realize the amount of food that you put in your mouth, but just the range of experiences. But like you said, how it all goes together.
Yes, totally.
We always, in my Middle Eastern experience, has always been chai tea. So you'd have a chai tea, and then you'd have to have something sweet afterwards, even if it was something small. But that's local culture, because all of the flavors and the tastes come in a traditional logical order.
Exactly. Oh, yes, you hit that nail right on the head.
And so I would what I've learned, and having many of those arguments in my head myself about, I'm a carnivore. I don't eat veggies. Eat the freaking salad. Like,
That's right. That's right.
Eat what's presented to you in the local culture. And like, for example, I went out, I took my wife out for supper last night at this new local restaurant. We've had a large Indian immigration into the western end of Canada, and it's fantastic. So we're starting to see a lot of Indian cultural restaurants pop up. One of my favorite dishes is butter chicken or chicken masala, both of those. I've had it all around the world. And I literally had to tell these folks in a little cafe in a neighborhood in Canada that that was literally the best
Yeah.
butter chicken I ever
Yeah.
had. And
Yeah.
and the brilliance of it is this was 4 pharmacists who immigrated from India
Yes.
who decided that them amongst 10,000 new of their compatriots have come over to Canada. They need a restaurant.
Yes.
So Buddy said we went back and got this guy who's been a 30-year chef in India.
Ooh. Ooh.
And they've divided the kitchen. Half of the kitchen is North American barbecue and half the kitchen is traditional Indian. I've never seen that
Wow.
combination in a restaurant.
Yeah.
My wife was even joking, like, I said to my wife, I'm leaving you for these 4 pharmacists. Like, I'm going to eat here the rest of my life. Like, I'm done. I'm going to be 800 pounds and happy because this is literally the best Indian
Yeah.
cuisine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the last time I had something that good was in a traditional Indian environment.
Yeah.
It's like, and I'm sure you've had the experience, the first time you actually ate Chinese food in China,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
right? The
Definitely.
first time I ate
Mhm.
Turkish food, now the Greeks will get mad at me because apparently Cyprus is not Turkish, but
No.
um, depending on your point of view, but having a Turkish meal in a Turkish environment is even going to be different than if I go to a Turkish restaurant.
Yeah,
It's wrong.
you introduce an even more interesting issue, on the geopolitical stage where hegemony is the key and people go to war over for strange reasons.
Well,
And there's a level of hatred that drives that. When it comes to certain cultural things, however you identify it, whatever word you put on it to describe it, actually means nothing. In a Greek island like Cyprus, having Turkish food and calling it Turkish is not a problem. Right? Here, in Jordan, it's so eclectic uh, that they will actually tell you some of the best things that you could possibly eat, and they're not necessarily Jordanian.
yeah,
And it's part and parcel of this polyglot of culture that has been around for centuries, right? I mean, you could go back and read, the so-called Old Testament and realize that all these people are Semites. I mean, they all eat the same way. There are certain things they don't eat, but obviously, but they all don't eat it.
right.
You're not going to get pork in a Turkish restaurant any more than you're going to get in an Israeli restaurant. It just doesn't exist. Don't ask for bacon. It's as simple as
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
And so there's a commonality that whatever label you put on it, they're very specific about origins, but the differentiation is not about culture. For example, this one, another conversation we'll have at another time about being a chick magnet on my flight from Toronto
Yeah,
to Jordan.
absolutely.
This woman kept telling me about all the best ice creams and where to go. And she said the best ice cream is Arabic ice cream. And I mentioned this to my local friends here, and they said, "Oh, actually, it isn't just Arabic; it's Syrian, and this is the kind of ice cream that you go for." And it is different, by the way, because I cannot have ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant. I don't care if it's made with camel's milk. I don't care what it's made with. It is qualitatively different. And it was one of the discussion points over the last few days with in the program. We started talking about products and international trade and what moves, what doesn't move, what are the different conditions and the challenges and so on and so forth. And I posed the question to the group, and there were like 40 people in the room, and these are seasoned international shippers. Uh, I posed the question. I said, "What do you think is the most difficult item to transport anywhere in the world, even locally?" And it took them aback. They, oh, well, it's got to be green peas. I said, no, no, come on, give me a break, will you? It's got to be this, it's got to be that. Flowers. I said, well, yeah, flowers. Those are fragiles. Those are things that if you have the temperature at least within a limit, they're okay. If you want to know how to move cut flowers, go to Holland, go to the Netherlands. They have made this a scientific fact. You can transport anywhere in the world. Um, cut flowers, and they do it by air. There it is. It's not the most difficult. They perfected it from a science point of view. And everybody puzzled. They kept throwing things out, suggestion. I said, no, no, no. In the end, I said, okay, okay, enough torture here. I said, it's ice cream. And all the ice cream makers I know who work in big retail stores, excuse me, delivering to, say, the Loblaws or the metros, they will tell you that the most difficult item to move, even locally, is ice cream. And you say, why? I actually questioned somebody about that. Why? Because the temperature differential is something like 10 degrees.
Yeah.
If it's 10 degrees not high enough or 10 degrees too high, it melts. If it's not high enough, it melts and then refreezes. That ruins the ice cream. If it's too high, it crystallizes. That ruins the ice cream. So your time frame for delivery is within the temperature variabilities. And they will tell you it is the most difficult item anywhere in the world to move. So you go to a place like Italy, you go to a place like Spain, you come here to Jordan. What is the ice cream that you get? Yes, you can get the ice cream in the freezers, that you get from the Nestle's and all that. Probably made locally, because it has to be. It's not going to come from New York City or
We're not
from
going to freeze it
Chicago.
and fly it.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not going to happen. It's got to be made locally. But the other is you go to a restaurant and the ice cream is made locally, right? That's the ice cream you get. And within a matter of days, it's either used up or thrown out
Yep.
because it's no longer ice cream as from a quality point of view.
And
So,
that
so
that
go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's a similar challenge to pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
I was responsible for a period of time for a pharmaceutical cold chain for a hospital and trying to move drugs that have a very, very specific short range of temperature
Right.
tolerance,
Right.
um, from very cold environments through colder environments into very hot environments,
Right.
and then making them through the hot environment to a place where you could, with your cryo cubes and all the different things that we would have to do, like examples of huge pallets worth of medicine expiring on the and disaster response expires on the tarmac
Yes.
because the people making the donation made the appropriate arrangements, but nobody was aware that this was coming on the logistics end at the other end, so it sat on a tarmac
Yes.
and
Yes.
and just expired. So things like that are quite the challenge, especially the intermodal issues. I mean,
Yes.
when you it's one thing to go airhead to a place on the airhead. For example, we had a hospital on an airhead. So the plane would land, you'd offload the plane and you'd literally on a pallet jack right into the hospital. Well, that's pretty cool. But that's not the rest of the world, right?
Oh,
Everybody else has your intermodal problems of
yes.
maintaining all of that temperature. And you know, I'm thinking, pharmaceuticals are important, but I understand refrozen ice cream has a very specific taste to it.
Oh,
You
oh, yes.
know, you
Yeah.
know
Oh,
that
yes.
this has melted and refrozen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I used to go to a restaurant here in downtown Toronto when I lived on the east side of Toronto. And I had called Ristorante San Lorenzo. And Corrado came from the same village, Modena, as Pavarotti. They grew up together. And this was a man, typical Italian, he was like 300 pounds of pure
Yeah.
sweat.
Yeah.
Pure sweat in an open kitchen. It was a beautiful restaurant, absolutely stunning restaurant. And it became one of my favorites. And I got known and I had my own table and all that nonsense. But I would go to to the symphony. At that time, I wasn't traveling a lot. So I'd go to the symphony, then I'd drop by and, then go home, so that I would spend a nice evening doing that, which is something in semi-retirement I'm going to start doing again, but the restaurant's no longer there. It's about going to the symphony again and starting to relax and enjoying things. But that's a different question or comment. He had a customer once who was a salesman, and I overheard the conversation, and later on we talked about it, who was a Haagen-Dazs rep, and wanted to bring Haagen-Dazs into the restaurant. Made all kinds of promises and so on and so forth. And Corrado said, no, I can't allow you to bring your ice cream. He said, I know your quality is very high. It's just that we're not going to be able to control the quality. And
Yeah.
I do not want my restaurant associated with quality problems.
Yeah.
Because he could have sold a dish of this stuff for like incredible amounts of money. But he said, it's not about the money. It's about my reputation. He said, I can't do that.
Which is worth far more than the cost of ice
Of
cream.
course, of course, of course. As an aside, he left Toronto, uh, not because he didn't like Toronto, he was very successful. It's just that he got an offer to go to Halifax to open up 9 restaurants being financed by all kinds of people. And so he ended up in Halifax. And I thought, yeah, okay, it's one of my favorite cities, but I'm not going to go all the way to Halifax just to have your food. So thank you very much. Goodbye. Have fun, kind of thing. But it's amazing how we encounter just the tiniest things, because in an everyday way, we go to the grocery store, we go to the freezer, we buy the ice cream and don't even think about how it got here.
No,
You
very
know,
few do. Very, very few do. And then, you can even roll back to the times at the beginning of the pandemic when everybody realized how much came by truck.
yes, yes,
And international shippers faced the idea of closed borders to certain different types of goods.
yep,
You saw slowdowns in reception and um, receipt and dispatch because of less staff available. And all of a sudden, everybody realized, ooh, there's this big logistics footprint
yeah,
behind that. My favorite little Haagen-Dazs coffee flavored ice cream that I love to have at the end
yes,
of the day,
yes,
right?
yes,
What do you
yeah,
what do you mean it just doesn't magically show up here? How
yeah,
does it get from where it is? Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah. Don't we have transporters like they have in Star Trek?
it's
No.
well, yeah, I lived that world as for spending 28 years in the army as a logistician, moving things around.
Yeah.
When they talk about me, I know I've messed up.
Ah,
When
ah,
when
ah,
when the conversation in any group meeting is about
yeah,
logistics,
yes,
something has gone wrong.
yes, yes. That was a
Even when Herculean efforts
yeah.
made something happen, that was just considered a normal day.
This was a point that was raised by my colleague Amin, because I did 2 days, 3 sessions a day, and he did 1.5 or two sessions on the last day. Excuse me, on international trade. We made a distinction between globalization and international trade. And one of the things he emphasized was uh, logistics in particular, supply chain, if you want to add that to it, is really one of those silent requirements
Yeah.
for every day. You don't know anything about it. You don't even think about it. The only time you know what logistics is on an any day basis is when it fails.
Yep.
It's when it breaks down, and it can break down in the most minor or in the most major ways. And that's when you know what logistics is. You know,
Yeah. Or you try to do something really quickly that can't be done quickly. Like, I got to get this over the other side of the world. Well, hold on a second. Where's your
Yes.
paperwork?
Yes.
Where's your shipping status? Where's your car form, your clearance form? You know, where's your bill of lading? Like, what do you mean? I just want this to go to the other side of the world. Well, there's a few things that happen between now and then, right?
Yes.
Yes, Air Canada Cargo or Emirates Cargo can get it from A to B pretty quickly as long as you have a lot
Yep.
of money.
Yep.
But there is a few things that need to
Exactly.
happen.
Exactly. Well, when we talk about supply chain, generally, we say there are actually, and I actually had this conversation with a group of students today. I said, there's no such thing as just a supply chain. There's no such thing as just a, source to a destination, single line, one layer, logistics. I said, this is a marine, school. So these are people who are going to be are being trained to be ship crews, and I said there are multiple layers involved in the movement of product A. I had a bottle of water, product A to destination Q. And they looked at me and I said, first of all, there's the purchase. Someone on one end is the buyer purchasing from the supplier who's the seller. All right. And then there's a financial transaction that goes on here. You've got to pay for that. Now that's on a commercial basis. Even in a military so-called non-commercial, someone's paying. This
Yeah.
is not free. No one's
Oh
going
yeah.
to send no one's going to send a bottle of water to anywhere in the world out of the goodness of their heart. Sorry, this is a purchase. This is a
Yeah.
sale.
Yeah.
So there's that. There's that whole negotiation, which probably takes place out of any tangible. No one's holding the bottle saying buy this, unless you're in a bazaar and they say this buy this rug. It comes from my aunt. Yeah, okay, from
Sure it does.
so that's a different way of making a sale. So
Yeah.
there's that transactional side. That's one layer of communication. Then there is the actual transport, which involves often, and it has to involve multimodal. You don't just, the bottle watering plant is not attached to the airport in order to go into a foreign destination.
Yeah.
It is somewhere inland and it has to move and somebody is touching it. And I said, by the way, your role as ship people who are going to be the crew of a ship, that's where you come in. Because not only is there a transport side to this, which is multimodal, there is a multiple custodial factor. And they look at me and they say, what are you talking about? Well, the product leaves the distribution center of the bottled watering operation and is put on a truck. The truck has custodial responsibility for that water. The
Yep.
truck arrives at the airport. It is, uh, you know, put into whatever it is you do, because it's going to be flown. Why you would fly tons of water in bottles is a whole other issue. But even if it's in a container and
Yep.
you're going to put it on a ship, there are people handling it. There are people who have custodial responsibility as it moves from point A to point B to point C to point D. Those are critical aspects, broken down into small, let's say, factors around supply chain and logistics. You know, the 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 organization that is in charge of the container, the ship that is, a container ship, they all have custodial. They don't own the water, but they possess it.
Yep.
All right. And now you are dependent on you talked about documentation and information and clearances. I'm talking about just a physical aspect of moving from point A, then you have to do B, you have to do C, E, F, G, H, Q, R. Otherwise, it doesn't go anywhere.
And that's where the vast majority of your issues are going to pop up. And I mean, I'm familiar with air shipments. So when you're buying a pallet position on an aircraft, You buy a pallet position on a certain aircraft. Most airlines will want it at X number of hours, sometimes up to 8, 10 hours prior to wheels up time for the aircraft. Your freight has to arrive.
Yes,
So if your freight handler moving it from the water plant to the airport
that's right.
misses that timing, you
Exactly.
don't get your money back for the pallet position.
No,
You have to buy another pallet position,
that's right.
and it's probably not written into the contract, and that the freight forwarder is not going to bear the
Oh,
financial responsibility of missing that deadline
that's
because
right.
it was likely beyond their control. Accidents, traffic,
Oh,
whatever it may be.
the 401 in Toronto. Give me a break.
401 in Toronto, I couldn't get to Pearson Freight in time. I lost my
Right.
pallet position. And that's 10 G's. That's not a little bit of money. That's
Oh
tons of
no,
money.
that's right. That's right.
And when you think single layer, you miss all of the moving parts that are likely to cause you the most grief.
Exactly.
And it's the
Mhm.
people who just think about the big stuff that miss the little stuff that are generally get bitten by the little
Yes.
stuff.
Yes. And this is what I like to emphasize when we talk about this thing called logistics is it's a misunderstanding or even supply chain. I said the greatest lie in our entire world, the world of the work we do, is to call it a chain, right? A chain is a linear image, and
Linkage.
it's made up of links. What we forget is that there are links. It's the links, not the chain,
Yeah.
that's operable here. And you have to be prepared to understand, at least start there, what the links are, who is involved in each link, because it's not the same person, right? This is a what we call a community of service. There are a community of people that you depend on to get that damn bottle of water to its from its purchase point to its destination point.
Yep.
And this is not something that one takes lightly, and it runs smoothly until it doesn't run.
Until it doesn't.
That's right. And then you
Yep.
go, oh, where's my water?
Yep. And somebody like, well, I where's my water? And you're like, well, these 7 things happen, but to the end customer, that's
Oh,
irrelevant.
that's
The
irrelevant.
only thing that matters is the water is not here.
That's right.
And I paid for the water to be here.
Right.
You have to
That's
give
right.
me water.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
I mean, I always refer to it as a system. I mean, supply chain is part of it, but I look at it as a total
oh,
system
exactly.
of inputs
Exactly.
and exputs and people
Yes.
that are involved in it.
Yes.
And that's why I've always said whenever I try to educate people on logistics, big L logistics, I'm thinking the best way to do it is to draw it. I'm a
Yes.
visual learner, right? So I'm
Yeah.
a whiteboard guy. I love whiteboards.
Yeah.
I said creation of water on the left hand side, consumption of water on the right hand side.
Yeah.
Now I want you to draw all of the events, the
Yeah.
inputs, the people, the systems involved
Yep.
in connecting those two dots.
Yep. 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 Interesting you say that because I remember working with a group of young freight forwarders who were just newbies in their own world. And I gave them a challenge. I said, what I want you to do is draw. And at the time, we weren't in a place with a whiteboard. We had this long table, and I just took paper and I just roll of paper, like loose, whatever. And I just rolled it out. And I said, I want the whole bunch of you to draw step by step how you actually start from home in order to get on a plane to go somewhere. And I want every step identified. Don't leave anything out
Yeah.
because the thing you leave out is the critical element that's going to ruin your trip.
Mhm.
And they looked at me, but I'm sorry, I have this uh I have nighttime out there. They they thought I was nuts. And in the discussion, they realized, oh, that as freight forwarders, while they were doing a process map of flight, their morning flight, they were talking about, you know, consolidation into containers of products that are in cartons that might be on pallets. I said, okay, but you're a, starting from a single item, and then it's aggregated, then it's consolidated, then it's moved, then it's, transition, it's transshipped
Yeah.
from what I said, and then you get the other issue where you're saying, by the way, you have to plan all that and buy the space. The space doesn't just, it's not like the subway or the bus. You actually can't get on the subway without paying for it.
Right. When you ship maritime, you're buying the space for your container
Right,
on the ship based upon a weight that you provided ahead of time. So you
right.
better make sure your container weighs,
Yes,
because when ships get weighed wrong, they kind of tilt a little bit and it's very uncomfortable for those on board. Um, like this is something you understand that all of these things put together, all of these variables. I mean, a logistician is a variable juggler. I
yes,
mean, that's essentially all of the inputs that come in. But when you
yep,
ship a container, you have the container,
yes, yes,
right?
yes,
You
yep.
may have it at source. The container may be picked up somewhere along the
Mhm,
shipping
mhm,
journey. It may be packed in a sea container, but the guy who owns the boat is selling you a space from A to
all
B
right, right.
based upon a weight and a size of TEU. Whether you're a 40-foot, 20-foot high boy, whatever,
Yeah, yeah,
reefer, whatever it may be, whether you need power on board for the reefer or whatever it may
yep,
be.
yep, yep. And
Uh,
every single item, everything you just identified is a cost.
yeah,
Uh,
everything.
everything. Uh,
Yep.
there's an interesting, this is again, the um, part of the discussion today with these students who are not kids. These are people who are going to be, uh, managing a ship in seas, out in the seas. And I said, when you encounter a container ship, you have to think of the placement of containers as a science. And they looked at me. What are you talking about? Well, the science is around what used to be called a very old series of acronyms, LIFO and FIFO. And they went, what? I said, last in, first off. First in, last off, FILO actually, and you go,
Yep.
the placement of the container on the container ship, which may or may not be the responsibility of the crew, yes, it is, most likely, is also governed by the decision of the captain and anybody else involved who has to position the architecture of the placement of. I said, you're talking about structuring, the um, the entire ship consist. And this is not something that happens because you decide to put it over there. I
No,
mean, it can't be just over there. Because if it's over there and you come to your first port of call, and it happens to be the one you have to take off, you can't move all the other things to get it out of the way. This is like not like going to the grocery store and moving the bags of potato chips so in order to find the one you want. It doesn't work that way.
no. And if you did, if you landed in Rotterdam and you needed them to move 4 containers out of the way to get to one, they'll do it for you. But you just
Oh,
paid for the movement of 5 containers,
exactly, exactly.
which
Yeah.
now changes the cost model, right?
Mhm.
And that cost is not the shipper. That's the shipper's cost. The
Right.
It's not the owner of the waters
No, no,
cost. I'm not paying for that as the consumer because you put my container of water in the wrong part of the ship.
yep.
And it's actually, there's a couple of really interesting YouTube channels about life on board container ships.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of deckhands who have ones. There's a couple of first officers, and there's a couple of captains that have their own YouTube channels that talk about their life and the process on these container ships. And one of them was they did an interview with their equivalent of a loadmaster. So the person on board the container ship responsible for the ordering and the stacking, the removal and the addition of the containers. And it's this mathematical genius
Oh, yes.
pattern that's all figured out as to, what side of the ship should be closest. Should it be the port or the starboard side against the dock to be the most efficient? And they go down to the finite thing to save the every minute that they can, because it's like an airplane. An airplane only makes you money when it's in the air.
That's right.
And a shipping and a sea container ship makes you money when it's at sea. It doesn't
Yes.
make you money at port.
No.
Right. Which is why, I don't know if you, total side, but if you saw that brouhaha with Ryanair and airports in the UK, because Ryanair, I don't know if you've ever flown Ryanair,
No.
super discount,
Yes.
the definition of discount, almost as
Yes.
bad as Southwest. But they have their own air stairs that pops out of the side of their aircraft.
Oh.
Well, no, they don't want to waste any time. They're
Mm.
trying to get 30 minutes and less, unload the whole plane, load up the next group, and airborne in 30 minutes. Because that's how they make money when their planes are in the air, not on the ground. And so all of the processes and procedures being added by a couple of UK airports were dramatically slowing their arrival and departure times, which were changing the schedule, which was changing the pricing model, which was directly affecting the profitability. So they sued them, saying, no, you have to do this. This was part of our contractual agreement, because
Yeah.
every minute the airplane's on the ground, I'm losing money. It needs to be moving. So they have the process. It's like, I think it's Southwest in the US where you don't pick seats. You don't get seat assignment.
No, you don't.
Right? Everything's wide open.
Yes.
Just get on the damn
That's
plane
right.
and move,
Yes.
type of thing,
And
right?
move fast, and if you're too slow, too bad.
Right. You'll get run over if you're
Yes.
too slow.
Yes. Yes.
And in shipping, it's the same thing. When this thing is at shore, and we used to have the same issue with air modal when we were dropping aircraft around the world, and your pallet positions, we had to empty those because an aircraft is $30,000 an hour or more to run. Right. So every hour that it's losing is adding to maintenance time. It's adding to additional aircraft requirements and everything. So everything was timed, which is why when we used to ship in the military, we had sometimes your air freight had to be there 36 hours ahead of the plane ride. You're like, this is ridiculous. The plane's not even here. Yeah, but they have everything weighed, placed on the pallet, organize the pallets on the ground as how they will be loaded into the aircraft. All of this to lower the downtime of the most expensive part of the process, which is the aircraft itself. And again, that's when you just think, I'll load the aircraft, I'll unload the aircraft. Well, life is a little bit more complicated than that.
Totally. You remind me of something that was said to me many years ago by somebody who he's retired now, responsible for the supply logistics, the inventory, if you will, at a automobile plant. I think it was a Chrysler plant. And his big issue was that if we go on strike, or if the material isn't here, if the item isn't, at its position along the assembly line, the cost for stopping the line is something like, at the time, was $15 million a minute. And I went, excuse me? He said, it's precisely what it is. So if the reason why the automobile unions, the unions in particular, have such power is because shutdown is more expensive than raising salaries.
Far more, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's a minute by minute issue versus, okay, I'll pay you over a year, another $80 million. Don't worry about it. That's easy. Compared to $15 million a minute for a strike that might take 3 weeks, and it's 3 shifts. 3 shifts, 24-hour assembly, because it doesn't shut down, after an 8-hour shift. No, they continue. That's the whole point. That's what it's all about. Why? Because shutting it down is going to cost you all this money, and it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Coming back to a little bit full circle, back to climate, weather, being out in a canoe at minus 400 degrees and stuff like that, or being in a super hot climate. One of the things I learned when I was teaching at Mac, one of the things I learned was some great insights from people who used to work in the steel mills. They're wonderful, typical, salt of the earth kind of people. And these would be men, mostly men, but probably at the time it was primarily a male dominated arena, working close to the actual smelter. Now we're talking temperatures here that make, Saudi Arabia in the middle of August at plus 75 degrees Celsius, walk in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking really,
Yeah.
really. I mean, this will burn the hair off your eyebrows. If you get anywhere close enough to it. And they used to say we actually wear long johns from the neck all the way down to the ankles, under all of our clothing, which of course is the fire retardant clothing or heat retardant clothing anyway. And I would look at them. I said, geez, why would you do that? And they said, no different from skiers. It's wicking the sweat. It
Yeah.
actually cools you down.
Mm-hmm.
This is almost the first or second or third or 400th law of thermodynamics. Not being a scientist, I just put a number on it. And this is the irony of, or maybe it's the misunderstanding we have of how to handle heat. Um, we think that you take clothes off in order to handle heat, when in reality, you're actually losing more water, body water, by sweating. And what you really need to do is to capture that water, wicking,
Yeah.
so that you actually cool down.
You wonder, that's why I love in the some of the nomadic tribes that I've come across in the deserts, the men are wearing long black clothing in the sun.
Yes, yes,
And I forget the name of it. Somebody explain it again. A scientist explained this to me. There's an effect of an air chamber that's created between your inner
yes,
clothing and your
yep,
outer clothing.
yep,
Your outer clothing needs to be dark to absorb the heat of the sun to create this air barrier between your inner clothing and
yep,
the outer clothing. And that actually keeps you cool.
yes.
You're
Oh,
not better off in a short white t-shirt in the
no,
desert than you
no,
are in a big, loose, flowing,
yes,
dark garment. And who am I to argue? They've lived there for tens of thousands of hundred thousands of years in
yeah,
this type of thing. And
yeah,
and that's why when I went to the desert the first time, it was like I went a short sleeve and everything. And soon I realized, no, no, long
right,
sleeve, long pants,
yes, yes,
nice, high, tight,
yes,
reasonably tight collars, a
yes,
brim, a nice brim hat to keep the direct sun off your.
yes. That's a different issue. Yes, yes.
But you need long sleeve, long legged clothing in heat environments, and it's almost the antithesis to what we think. Uh,
And that's actually the great word, antithesis. That's the reason why I went back to it, almost coming full circle to our initial or opening conversation. And that is our the everyday person's understanding of something like logistics, which is practically nil, is actually the reality actually is the antithesis of what it is they think happens in order to get toilet paper onto the shelf. And uh they just think it appears
yep,
because it's on the shelf.
yep,
And when you think about, if you are going to think about what possibly logistics is when there's no toilet paper on the shelf.
Nope.
And then you don't actually think about logistics. You actually think about yelling at the grocery store for being so inept, for not having, or at your fellow shopper for hoarding,
Yeah.
which tends to be in some areas, countries which will remain nameless, a way of handling, things like hurricanes. Let's go and buy all the bottled water. We know it's coming. It's bad version of preparedness.
It's like, especially those folks who live in areas where they get hit, where they're exposed to the risk of a hurricane
Yep,
every year.
yep.
But periodically, when they're exposed to the risk of an actual hurricane arrival, they
Mm.
act as if this event has never occurred
Oh,
before.
again, yep. Again, we get back to the term that you introduced. It's an antithesis
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah.
This will never happen here. Excuse me, you're in a hurricane alley. Like what
You
part?
watch people in Florida
Yes,
lining up to buy 4x8 sheets of plywood, generators, and bottled water and batteries as if they've never heard of a hurricane. I'm like, okay, if you live in Florida, on the coast of Florida, any one of the coasts of Florida,
yes, doesn't matter.
you probably should have this stuff anyhow, because your probability says sometime in the next 5 years you're going to need it. But people don't
Exactly.
think of risk that way.
No,
They
no,
never think of risk that way, right?
no,
So, but
no.
like today, it is a bright sunny day. Like here in Ottawa, we have tornadoes now. It's
Yes, I
something
know.
far more regular than it was
That's,
10 the last time I lived here. Then again, the last time I lived here in 2009, we had an earthquake that shook the
I
house.
was just going to say there was an
Nothing.
earthquake instead. Yes, I do
Uh,
remember.
but we now have an increased frequency of tornadoes.
Yep.
Whole nother show to discuss why, but that's just a statistical reality. So
Yes. Yes.
you would think that people would start paying more attention to the things that they are exposed to, and the ideas that they should, things they might consider,
No.
because of an increased exposure to a risk. And the answer to that is a big fat no.
No.
No, they don't. Right. And,
No.
but have you ever heard the taco analogy for weather?
No.
So everybody gets watch and warning mixed up on the weather. Like when somebody says a tornado watch or tornado warning, they always, I'm not sure which one's the bad one, because neither one of them sounds really bad, right?
No.
So the one
No.
guy did a video. He said, when there's a tornado watch, I have all of the ingredients to eat tacos. When there's a tornado warning, I'm eating tacos.
That's that's brilliant. That is brilliant. That is, if you really want to understand something,
Yeah.
think food.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
something that everybody understands, the
Yes.
7 or 8 little dishes you have with all the ingredients necessary to make tacos, and then the actual when it's together and you're chewing down on a taco. And that's the difference.
Well, it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. Again, it seems to be the way you and I have conversations. We actually go around and then come back to the
We
beginning.
come naturally right back to the
Just
beginning.
automatically. It's that shock effect thing. We live in comfortable surroundings, all right? Whether it's, I got to be blunt, here in Amman, Jordan, the first thing I think about being totally prejudiced or ignorant, which is a combination, thinking, oh, these are people who live in tents and they have camels. And yeah, okay, there are camels. Yeah, why? Because the milk now is considered a commodity. It has nothing to do with the fact that we're a desert people living in a desert like it's Lawrence of Arabia. Sorry, that's not the way we live. We have cars, we have all kinds of things, we have air conditioning. This is comfort zone. We live here in Jordan in a comfort zone.
Yeah,
We
absolutely.
do everywhere else in the world. And the only way we think about things such as the value of logistics is in an antithesis mode because we live with thesis,
Yep.
antithesis. Uh, the normalcy lulls us into a sense of ignoring everything around us. We don't know anything about logistics until it stops and we can't buy what our favorite food is.
It's the same huge assumptions we make of the operations of the 10 sectors of critical infrastructure that keep society running.
Right?
Every day we get up and assume that the systems that support will work. And you know what? Some ridiculously high percentage of time they do.
Yes. And that lulls us into
Yep.
believing the assumption. And
When I
I'm really going to be blunt about this. Thankfully, we don't have to live on the edge all the time. Right?
no.
We don't live in caves. We don't wonder where the saber-toothed tiger is, and so on and so forth. We actually can work through and live with assumptions. Opening day of this training session on Monday, I said, what I'm going to do is poke all your assumptions. All right. We live in a comfort zone of assumptions, and the assumptions are everything is going to be the same every single day. And I said, you know what? We assume the sun's going to rise tomorrow. I said, I don't want to be totally negative and get you all worried, but the ambiguity of that assumption is real.
Hmm.
Hence the VUCA,
Yep.
volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity is normative. If you could use such negative breakdown as a norm, but it is. It is what reality is all about. And I said, what I want you as a group in our discussions and in this whole series is to think strategically. And I said, strategic thinking starts with understanding we live in codependent relationships, right? Everything we do in logistics really requires us to understand that there are other people outside of our control that we depend on, full stop. And we can't control them. So there's the world of logistics that you're in. So your first assumption that you can make this container move from point A to point B, and you've done your work and everything is fine, assumes that everybody who touches that container has the same value system and the same commitment that you do. And we're just talking on a human level. We're not even talking about the capability. We're not even talking about the machinery or the technology involved in that. So I said, so automatically, I want us to get out of the four walls where we live comfortably with our assumptions and think about our codependencies on others in order to be successful in our own right. That's what strategic leadership is all about.
Hmm.
That's what leadership is all about. It's not
Yep.
about position. It's not about any of the usual trappings of leadership. To be a leader is to recognize that we are connected in ways where control is not operable.
No, and one of the other important parts is another field that I do a lot of work in is social capital and building relationships. And successful logisticians are those individuals who build positive, nurturing relationships with trust, norms of reciprocity
Exactly.
with others, with everybody along their value chain, along their supply chain, everybody they interact with. You know, for you and I both to be successful, we have to have a trusting relationship. I have to
Yeah,
know there's a norm of reciprocity between you and I, um, because VUCA is the reality. It's the
exactly.
frame the world is, and I'm somebody that looks at volatility and go, what an incredible opportunity for those who can
Yes.
operate in it.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Those who can successfully
Yeah.
navigate a
Yeah.
volatile and uncertain world
Yes. Yes.
are going to get very wealthy very
Yes.
quick.
Yes. I refer to, I did refer to it this time, and I'm using it more often. I'm talking about that gap between our assumptions and the the so-called ordinary, and then the disruption that is also ordinary in many senses, but maybe the better word is real rather than ordinary. And that's an opportunity gap,
Huge, huge.
right? It's not about being afraid of disruption. It's about what are you going to do in the face of disruption as an opportunity. People who are thinking about supply have always thought about supply chain logistics from a process engineering point of view, have engineering value systems embedded in their heads. And that is, you have to eliminate variability. It's one of the key issues, the key focal points of engineering. You have to have stasis, and you have to eliminate any variability that will upset the stasis. Now, there are obvious reasons for doing that. You don't build a bridge expecting it to fall down, unless, of course, there's a ship that runs into it and you live in Baltimore, but let's not talk about that one. And so while you don't build variability, you don't build a ship made of rubber so it can, have variability. You do build a skyscraper because in such a way that it has to move.
Mm-hmm.
People don't understand that.
Yeah.
People think, it's a building. All buildings are static. That's it. It's no, they move.
They need to sway.
They
Yes.
because they're in direct line of major wind factors. The wind factor in architecture has to be taken into account. If you're going to build a house on the rock in Newfoundland, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, you better recognize that the ocean is real.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not just pretty.
Yeah.
Okay, it's real.
It gets angry.
Ooh, it's an ocean, folks. It's not a big lake. It's an ocean. Okay, and opening ourselves up to recognizing that and looking at it as a possibility, when in reality, I like to put a better spin on it. It's a VUCA possibility.
Yep.
This could be an extreme, and often enough it becomes an extreme because it's out of control to begin with. A tsunami is a tsunami is a tsunami. Folks, I don't know about you, but I don't care how big your wall is, you're not going to prevent the tsunami from knocking it down. But at the same time, if you build in a zone where tsunamis are normative on a regular basis, like the hurricane,
Yep.
zone along the east coast of the United States, what do you expect to happen? It just,
Yep.
you know,
It's just living with risk. People don't understand the risk, or
yeah,
they choose not to understand, or
yeah,
it's why our disaster costs are going through the roof, because we keep building expensive things in precarious locations,
yeah,
and then we
yeah,
wonder why when they
yeah,
break, they
yes,
cost us so much to
yeah,
replace. I mean, it's you live in a place like human settlement is, and I talked to somebody about this yesterday, talking about um we used to gather in groups and maintain tribal groups, but we moved with the food,
yes,
right? So humans would naturally congregate on lines of communication. So
yes,
waterways, plains, things that
yes,
were easy to traverse,
yeah,
easy to cross, and had access to fresh water and all the natural resources,
right,
which also happen to be the highest risk zones in the planet for
exactly,
natural. But does something you traded, but we used to move around.
yes,
Oh, when lunch went left, or when the lunch went west, you went west with it,
yes,
because it
yeah,
would eventually come back east.
exactly,
Nature had its circular patterns of movement. Humans would follow it around. Now we take something like New York City, we drop it in a pristine location for its original intent.
yep, yep,
And now, as the environment changes, we're like, I don't like this anymore. Well, you
yep,
can't pick up New York City and move it.
Nope.
So, what risks are you facing? How do
Yep.
I identify those risks?
Yep.
How do we mitigate those in a VUCA environment?
Yep.
And then I always add that extra step is how do we thrive in
Exactly.
a VUCA environment? Because
Yep.
the two lenses you can look at that through is, am I surviving
Yep.
events as they occur? Or do I choose to be ready to thrive
Yep.
during that event? So
Yep.
when the world goes upside down and I'm a shipping agency and something like the Houthi rebels show up in the Red Sea,
Yep.
which may have a slight impact on the Jordanian shipping industry, somebody thrived.
Yes.
Somebody
It,
had an
yep.
alternate
Yep.
methodology to deal
Yep.
with that,
Yep. Yep.
launched it, and stayed and got ahead of their peers
Yeah.
because they thought
Interesting.
that through.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting because one of the things that maybe we should close on because you did say you're going to play golf at some
Oh,
point.
yeah.
We're getting to 3:30 more or less your time and 10:30 my time.
Yes.
What in our meeting with the Canadian ambassador here in Jordan, who is, by the way, for the record, an absolutely incredible human being. Talk about someone who is so professional that he almost blew my socks off. He was that interesting. And one of the things that has emerged here in international movement of goods here in Jordan is the port of Aqaba on the Red Sea obviously has had difficulties. You can't get ships coming up, so the economy is affected
Yep.
nationally. However, there is a whole area of aid that's coming through neutral Jordan going into Ramallah and other places, the
Yep.
Gaza.
Yep.
And the as His Excellency said, he said there are overland routes in and out of um, Jordan. One being the Allenby Gate, going back to when British,
Yeah.
ruled this area for as a protectorate. And the difficulty at the Allenby Gate, as he outlined, was heavy security on one side and a commercial attitude on the other side. And he said, "You go, what?" The Jordanian side is run by the military and the security department for the country. And they are uptight about everything. Everything is halted, everything is inspected,
Yeah.
everything is touched, everything is, excuse the language, they pee on everything. This is not moving until we are satisfied that it can leave the country. And I thought, that's rather strange. You want it out of
Yeah.
the country
Leaving the
anyway.
country.
What's your problem? But
Yeah.
there seems to be this well, Jordan suffers, unfortunately, from too much bureaucracy. So it's a bureaucratic issue. Too many people with too many decision authorities
Yeah.
who have to be, identified, notified, and everybody has to touch it, kind of thing. That's what I think of bureaucrats. Everybody has got to touch it. So that becomes a problem. When it crosses the border and goes into the Israeli side, we're talking about the typical Israeli approach to things. Okay, we've got the trucks. We're
Yeah.
ready to move it.
Yep.
Like, where is it? It's the question. They don't have any customs at all holding it up. Right. So you think about it, and I know what the press is going to say about this. The Israelis are holding all of the relief
Yep.
material goods up, when in reality, it's the donor nation, if you want to put it that way, that is so worried about what it's handling that they are the block point. They're the ones holding everything at the border. And logistics, logistics 101. The favorable nation that should be supporting the movement of the goods is the nation that is actually stopping them.
Causing the
And
biggest block. Yeah.
that's right. Whereas the enemy nation that should be against any of this crossing, the so-called enemy nation, that should be against any of this crossing is saying, where is it? You know, we know it has to go to where it needs to go. You know, there's a whole commercial enterprise that's saying, this is how we make money in a crisis.
Truck drivers get paid by moving things,
Right,
and if they don't move things, they don't get paid, and that's a pretty basic reality of it. And
right.
it's no different wherever you are in the world.
Doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what side of the war zone you're in. It's irrelevant. All right. I need to make a living. I need to move goods from point A to point B. That's it.
Yep.
If I happen to be Israeli or I happen to be a Muslim or I don't give me a break. Okay.
Yeah.
Those are issues that you can talk about somewhere else. I need to make money. I need to feed my family.
And it's funny when you separate the people on the ground executing the task versus the policymaker and the politicians,
Oh,
you realize where the fight and animosity is.
that's right.
It's not at the local level.
No, no.
No, the border and crossing guys, the truckers delivering to the humanitarian organizations, they all get along great.
That's right.
Two different cultures, two different primary of the world's religions. My experience has been on the ground, person to person, human to human.
That's
There's
right.
no conflict. There's no fighting. There's no animosity. Ratchet it up a governance level, and
That's
you
right.
get that open distrust.
Yes.
Oh, look, here comes so and so with a load.
Yep.
Because he is or he falls into this category, they must
Yep.
be suspicious.
Of
They don't
course.
think about that on the ground.
No. No.
No.
You know, the running, I won't call it a joke, is you come to and you hear this, you know, the Jordanians are so funny. They said, we're all traders. We know how to trade.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's all we want to do is make a sale. And this is
Yeah.
the everyday Jordanian. This
Yeah.
is not, you know, we will accommodate whatever you need so long as you're paying me. All right. Yeah, yes, Habibi, you want this? Habibi will give it to you. Now, this is
Yeah.
what's going to cost you.
Yeah.
And it's the word Habibi is, you know, friend.
Yeah.
You know, you are now my pal. It's
Exactly.
and they
We're
will laugh about it themselves. You know, we're all friends so long as there's, you know, an exchange of money and so on and so forth. We become enemies when you try to cheat me.
yeah, or you take something from me or you prevent me from doing
Yeah,
what I normally do.
yeah, yeah.
Then now you're standing in way of me earning a living and living a normal life. It's
Exactly.
it's it's almost like it's the perfect definition of libertarianism.
Yes.
Just let me just get out of my way and let me live my life. People will make individual agreements between each other to sell goods.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just get out of the way of it and just let it happen.
Yeah. And of course, it's the everyday opportunist. You know, we're going to
Yep.
bring camels into town because people want the milk.
Oh,
Okay.
I tell you, one there was one, I think it was a Southern US group that joined us at one point, and we got into footbread. This was a joke I was telling somebody about. So there was a certain technique for making bread in a certain part of the world, um, where the ladies would walk on the dough with their feet.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Yes.
To
Yes.
this day, it is literally some of the best tasting bread I've
Yes.
ever had
Yes.
in my life. You
Yes.
just had to set aside what you knew the process was and
Yep.
how it
That's
was
right.
created.
Yep.
But as soon as one person brought it in, you know, my wife made this. She thought it'd be nice for you to try some. 2 weeks later, each of our local employees were bringing in 5 bags of foot bread made at home by their spouses to sell because we loved it so much. There was an opportunity to make money.
Exactly.
They sell it to me for $1 a loaf. They
Yes.
sell it to the local for 2 cents.
Yes. Now
And
look at the
so,
margin. Look at the margin right
oh
there.
yeah, and it's like instant opportunity presented itself to make a trade, to make an honest sale, and bam, overnight, all of these guys were coming in with foot bread.
Yeah.
And it was amazing bread.
Yeah.
It really was. It was wonderful tasting bread made fresh at zero dark stupid that morning. Um, and buddy came through, showed up at our work site at like 7 o'clock local time, and he had 6 loaves. We gave him $6 American, and that really he would have sold that whole bag for about 10 cents had he sold it on the local
Yeah.
market.
The local market. Yeah.
And so the ingenuity of people in that area of the world is just astounds
I,
me every time I go.
I agree. I agree. And we'll end on this. It's the openness and friendliness about it as well.
Oh yeah.
Nothing is hidden.
No.
They'll tell you this is foot bread. Why is it foot bread? Here's how it's made. And you go, oh. But then if you get over your own reluctance, I'm not going to call it a prejudice. If you
Nope.
get over your own reluctance and think, okay, maybe I should taste it, or maybe don't ask how it's made first, taste it, and then be told how it's made, then you go, that was really good bread. I don't care how it's made.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And just like take the opportunity for what it is.
Exactly.
And and every time that I did contract negotiations with people in the Middle East, I'm like, I wish I could transplant these conversations to the same negotiations I would have in North America.
Yeah, yeah, which we can.
Like we sat down and broke out the tea. We had a cup of tea together.
Yep,
Once they decided that you were a worthy soul and a good soul, now we can do business together.
yep, yep.
And then we would do business, and it wasn't like I'm going to try to fleece you.
Oh,
This is what it costs. This is our normal. Nobody's trying to cheat anybody else.
yep, yep.
And they deliver. And you get what you wanted and you paid, and everybody was happy. And it was like, wow.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't have a small claims court in Jordan backed up for two
No,
years of contractual
no,
dispute,
no,
right? You
no,
don't.
no. It doesn't work. I mean,
No.
I know a person who knows a person who knows a person who knows a person, and they're going to take care of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
And it just gets done.
what one of the last things is our colleague Amin is a riot. He really is. He's English educated and can be pretty, I've got to deal with this and put it all on paper and structured, and so he's project management and all that. And I value that. But he's less Jordanian than most Jordanians. I mean, I just look at him and say, could you just calm down, relax? No, don't get uptight. And two things occurred my last two stories. One is I arrive on Saturday, last Saturday, and this is a topic we'll cover in another session. It was Independence Day for Jordan, and so the traffic was just a zoo. It was like everybody. Saturday is usually, it can be a weekend, a day off, but often enough is not, because Friday is the official
Yep.
day off. And so all these people in their cars, waving flags, honking horns, and traffic jams. And he's trying to drive, and he said, "That's why I don't like driving. That's why." I said, "But it's Independence Day. Don't you understand?" Or I didn't quite say it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is a fun time. All right. These people are celebrating.
Yeah.
Then we got into an interesting discussion, which I hope we pick up next time, and that is there's no reason for Jordan to celebrate Independence Day if you understand what independence is. Americans celebrate Independence Day because they took up rifles and shot at other people and went into rebellion, which then became a revolution, which then became independence. We here in Canada, well, I should say we in Canada, because I'm not there, do not actually celebrate Independence Day. We celebrate Canada Day. The big distinction is we celebrate identity. We don't celebrate revolution.
Yes. And Americans sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's I'm just gonna stop it there. We could go into that,
Oh, yes.
but it's really interesting when you see that reflection.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And that was a really interesting conversation I have had with people who an older group of Jordanians that I've been dealing with. And they themselves said it was not independence. It was Identity Day. That's what it should be called. It should be
Yep.
called Jordan Day, uh, like we call it Canada Day.
Yep.
Uh,
Because it's celebrating the beginning of the Jordanian identity
exactly.
as a distinct nation.
Exactly.